the Art of Inspiration podcast. I have an amazing guest for you today. So I came across this individual on Instagram. Her messages absolutely are fantastic. They stuck out to me as someone who is always aspiring to be more and do more. Her message just resonated with me in such a deep way, and I was blessed with having her presence on this podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Elizabeth Federick. She is the owner of Evolve Counseling. She specializes in working with relationships, but really, if you follow her, I think her expertise runs a little deeper than that. Liz, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Our interactions over Instagram and the way that we've become connected has been really awesome. Sharing that passion for people development, for sure.
Yeah. And, I think I gave everyone a little bit of an insight, and I have a really hard time introducing people because I feel like, you're an amazing, first of all, entrepreneur. So for everyone out there, not only is she a doctor, but which is tough enough, she started her own practice. And that in and of itself, for anyone out there that's building a business, you know how tough that can be. So not only did she get her doctorate, build a business, built a very successful business, and is out there impacting lives. But I feel like that just scratches the surface. So can you tell us just a little bit about you, a little bit of your background, and tell us a little about the journey that you've had?
Sure, of course. Yeah, so in my early 20s, I was in retail management, and that's what I did for multiple years. Actually, started in my teens into my early 20s as I was getting my undergrad in psychology. And I knew I wanted to work. I knew I wanted to be a counselor, but then it was just the process. So I moved in, I did my master's in professional counseling. And then at that point, I actually went back to retail management because I was like, okay, what am I doing? Trying to figure it all out. And it was around that time I decided to get my doctorate. And so I started pursuing that while I was also finishing my licensure for counseling. And so that was a 10-year process in and of itself of the schooling and just really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I started working in a private practice setting and was really enjoying it. And my ex-husband, who is also a very close friend of mine, at that time, he said, you should be doing this yourself. Like, you should be running a business that is between that managerial background and then the psychology background. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. It seems like a lot of work. And so he was like, no, I think we should do this. So his nudging, we got it going, and he really helped me get started with it. We were still married at that time, and so we got it up and running. And so it was a whole progression over the last 15 years.
Amazing. So Evolve Counseling, it seems, up and running, prosperous.
Yes.
But I have to assume it didn't just happen like that. Like, you didn't just decide one day, you know what? I have my doctorate. Let me just go build a business. You open the doors and boom, everything is just perfect. Was there ever a time as you were building this business that you maybe felt like giving up? You felt like it was just a tremendous struggle for you?
Sure. And so probably more than once, for sure. So when we started, we were in an office. We had 3 offices that expanded in about 6 months to 7 offices. And then a year after that, we now have about 15 offices. And so it was this slow expansion, but the real punch in the gut was less than a year into opening the doors is when COVID hit. And so being an in-person service, and we all know how frantic that time was when everyone was afraid to leave the house. And so I am just have this business starting to get up and running, and now all of a sudden there's this huge pandemic going on, and not even the concern about just leaving the house, but what are finances going to look like? People started losing jobs. People couldn't afford something like that, was my thought around it, right? And so certainly we had been building and building, and we had just actually opened the second build out, which was this larger location. So we had just opened it probably about 2 months before everything got really crazy. And so I just took on double the office space, and I'm thinking people aren't going to leave their home, and they're not certainly not going to be able to afford these services. And so during that time, that was really scary. That was a lot of sleepless nights of just trying to figure out what to do. And really, it was about pivoting, right? And I hate to say that the pandemic was helpful to me, because that's not what I mean in that terms, but everyone was trying to figure out what to do, and everyone was scrambling and anxious. And so we were actually the best service for a lot of people at that time. And so that was, we kind of pivoted. We pivoted the marketing. We had to pivot to doing more virtual services. But yeah, that was a really scary time for a brand new business.
Absolutely. Wow. So, I mean, the pandemic, that obviously is something that affected so many different people from so many different industries. And
Yes.
you, who provides an in-person service, are a year in, just in the process of expanding, and then all of a sudden a global pandemic hits and you're scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. And, I always say that there is a tremendous opportunity in any challenge that we're faced with in life. I mean,
Yes.
when we think about business in and of itself, right? Any product or service that you have, it essentially solves a problem for someone. And what many people don't see is that when there's more problems, really what that is more opportunity. So you mentioned you didn't want to say that the pandemic helped you, but it did force you to pivot.
Yeah.
What was the mindset shift that you made that brought you from, okay, I'm having a sleepless night here, I don't know what to do, to really getting that ground underneath your feet, pivoting, and then running in the direction that where now you have multiple practices? What was that shift like for you?
Yeah, so that, first of all, having a good support system is crucial. And so anyone, any entrepreneur, anyone out there thinking that they can do it alone. And my support system is relatively small, so it doesn't have to be this huge one, but I did have a couple people that were behind me that really supported me through it and just kind of helped me keep perspective. And that was huge for me. And I would
Mhm.
say that the mindset shift was in the pivot of, okay, so this is what we're facing. Failure is never an option in my world. And so what do we have to do to make this still happen? And so that's when, figuring out the virtual services, we are identified as an essential service. And so because of that, we were able to continue to do in person. And so we just had to figure out all the guidelines around that. But really shifting it, getting on our marketing and really making our marketing geared towards that we're here to support them in this time of need. And I felt really passionate about that, because so many people were being isolated to their home and they weren't leaving the house, they weren't seeing anyone. And we did continue providing in-person services. And that was almost a mindset shift that was different. A lot of providers just went strictly to telehealth. And what I kept telling my providers is that, like, we are the only normalcy for our clients right now. We are a lot of times, the only people they're seeing in person. We are the only normal routine that they have right now. And that was crucial for us to be able to continue to provide that. So for me, it was kind of figuring out, from, of course, a marketing perspective, I need to keep my business afloat, but also from a mental health perspective, what do my clients need right now? And what my clients needed was to be able to have some in-person connection once a week.
You know, there's a lot that I just took from that. First of all, I see somebody that had a burning passion to help other people. And the one part of that that really stuck out to me is you said that this was the only normalcy. We're going through a pandemic, and this is the only opportunity that many of these people have to actually get out in the real world and connect face to face with another human being. That is a bold move in and of itself. In such a time where when COVID first came, not many people knew what to do. And the reality of it is, so many businesses were glued to their old model of how they did things. And they were just saying to themselves, we just have to wait this out. And we all know that we can't leave our situation and circumstances in the hands of something that we can't control. So you grabbed the reins, you decided to make some bold moves, and you made this strong pivot that was fueled by passion. I absolutely love that. Now, another thing, and I just got to ask you about this, is you said failure doesn't exist for you. It's not in your vocabulary. Where did you develop that strong mindset?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would say that's the way that my father raised me, was that the work ethic, and his big takeaway to me, which the reason I'm laughing is I don't have the best relationship with my father today, but I can acknowledge the things that he gave me, the goods that he gave me, right? And part of that, I remember he would always tell me in childhood, you have to be bold. He would say that was all the time, like being timid's not an option, being shy, you have to be bold in what you want. And so he instilled that over and over and over. And the work ethic that he instilled in me as well. Between the two of those things, that is a big part of my entrepreneurial spirit, is that in what I do, I'm bold in it. And also work ethic will take you, as you know, that will take you as far as you want to go. And I tell people that all the time, that, when people are asking me, how did you start the practice, or other providers, talking about wanting to start their own practice, and 100% I'm in support of that. And I would love to help those people grow. But what I tell them is that your hustle makes all the difference. So if you think that you are going to start a practice and you're going to start a business by working 9 to 5 and then kicking your feet up to watch TV at night and going, away to the beach on the weekends, like, that's not how you're going to build a business, my friend. And so that's a big part of, like, that work ethic ties in with this failure is not an option. And a big part of what I talk with my clients about is circle of control. And so we control what we can, and what we can't, we have to learn to accept that we can't, but there is so much that we can control. And when you start to recognize what can you control, what can you influence, and that's where you put your focus, you're unstoppable.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, don't let the smile fool you here. This is like a beast of an entrepreneur. Like I think the hair on my arms is standing up right now, where the fierce determination, it meets with a willingness inside of you that just keeps moving forward. You have all of these challenges. You have a business. First year, you're expanding. You get hit with a global pandemic. You say to yourself, failure isn't in my veins. And your work ethic, you just keep grinding and driving it home. Is that about right? I just want to make sure that I'm collecting all of that.
That's about right. And that's, I know for a lot of people who don't share that mindset, that can be a hard process, a hard thing to grasp. But I think it's what we were talking about earlier with the pivot, is that the pandemic was not within my circle of control. And I could say, well, screw it, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, what am I gonna do? It's a pandemic. Or we can pivot. So did it go exactly as planned? No, but there was still so much within my control that I was able to influence. And I think that at the end of the day, that's where most people, certainly entrepreneurs, get caught up, is by not recognizing what they actually can influence, and that, like, putting their energy towards that.
I love that. And so anyone out there, when you stumble upon this doctor's Instagram, you're going to see a big smile, probably an inspirational quote. Just know behind that, she's thinking, do the work, get it done.
Yeah, so suck it up, buttercup.
I always say that knowledge isn't power, right? Because knowledge can be a book that just collects dust on the shelf. I always talk about when I do coaching or consulting, the power of applied knowledge. Don't
Yes.
just sit there and learn. You have to take action. And this is for anyone out there, and me, I'm a big believer in energy manifestation, the law of attraction.
Yes.
Even with that, if you talk to the experts on manifestation, like they will tell you, you got to do the work, the inner work. And that is some of the hardest work that you'll ever do, being able to control your emotion. So anything that we're going to bring forth in this world is the product of our own two hands, taking the knowledge that we've learned and applying it, doing the hard things. So I love it. I love it. Wow.
Right.
I didn't see that. I mean, I sort of saw it coming, but I didn't see all that coming. So all of this now you've had probably many breakthroughs, but for you, and I guess, I can ask you this as a two-part question. What was on this entire journey, what would you consider to be your biggest breakthrough? And what is your definition of success?
Sure. So I think my biggest breakthrough is probably just going back to the mindset piece of, so even going back to what I said when Richard, my ex said, let's start this business. And I told him no, because I was like, and I did, and it grew bigger than I could imagine. But then I figured that's where we'd stop, right? So at that first expansion, I was like, that's where we'll stop. And then I kept going. And I think that the biggest breakthrough I've had is that the limits are what we create. And I created these mental limits for myself that I didn't even realize were happening. And I'm like, I could take over the world if I chose to, And so that was my breakthrough of like, I don't have limits. And so I'm going to keep going. And it's funny, I had a meeting this morning because talking about another expansion that we're going to do. And she asked, well, what is your vision for Evolve long-term? And I said, that's a great question, because a year ago or 2 years ago, it wouldn't be what it is today. And so I would say that to summarize this, my breakthrough is that I don't have limits. And so I'm just going to keep going.
That is so good. So good.
That would be the breakthrough.
And so, that is, and I've seen this so many times, and I saw this in myself. I think when you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business, for me, first of all, marketing and sales, I was terrified. And because marketing, it forces you to actually go out in the world and tell people that you're good at something. You can't market and say, well, I'm horrible at this, but you should try working with me anyway. You have to, what I call, own your fire. You have to own your expertise. You have to let the world know, hey, I have this skill. I have this gift that I can give the world. And if you're struggling with this problem, I'd love to be the person that can help you. And for me, that was so hard. And I see it in so many people because they don't see the value in themselves. And I'm hearing a lot of that as you are talking. You're saying to yourself at first, no, I don't know if I can do that. And then you just change the lens that you were looking through. And you're like, wait a minute. The only limit that I have is the limit in my mind, the limit that I have in my own mind. So if I can dream it and I can believe it, I am going to work my tail off to go get it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. And that's exactly it. Yeah. And so for that next question of how do I define success, it is not about how big the business gets to me. That is not my success. My success is that when I get to the edge of where I thought this is as far as I could go, and then I go one step past that, that is success to me. And so that, whether it's business, it's personal development, it's all of that, that's success.
That is, wow. Okay. So, you are totally, not totally surprising me, but are you a motivational speaker on the side? Is there a little side gig that we don't know about? That is something that I always say to myself, as I do coaching, speaking, and I'm very realistic. I'm not the type of person that says like, hey, you can do anything. Like if I wanted to like walk out of my door and jump to the moon, I probably couldn't do that realistically,
Sure.
right? But with that said, I think people really sell themselves short on how far they can actually go, because as human beings, we do have limits, but I think they are so far past what we actually believe them to be that it would just completely blow our mind if we actually knew how powerful and how capable we are. And the moment that we start to shed all of that and truly believe in ourselves is the moment that life starts happening for us. And for you, it's wow. You just motivated me. I typically wake up, I walk around motivated. So to get the hair standing up on my arms, you got to come with a little bit of fire, and you came with more than a little bit of fire. Success for you is pushing yourself to the max, pushing yourself to the limits and going one step farther. And I think, for me, I always say that at the end of my time, I will be happy when I know that I left it all on the playing field, when I've
Yeah.
literally given every single thing that I've had, like all the love, all the breakthroughs, all the inspiration that I could possibly give. And it seems, and I could be totally wrong, but it seems like you're heading in that same direction.
I would agree. That is, and I would say that those limits are just so relative. And so for anyone listening, their limits are not going to be my limits. They're not going to be your limits. But for you to be able to set this goal for yourself and then achieve it, and not only achieve it, but surpass it, like that's the dream, right? That is such a big mindset. That is success, is that you are able to push past whatever your limit is. And so yes, that's where I'm headed. And so to answer the question for my meeting this morning, I don't know where I'm headed. I don't know what a year from now looks like, but I do know that what I'm doing right now, I'm really proud of. And tomorrow will be the one step further. So that is what I'm focusing on.
That is just incredible. And for everyone out there listening, there was so many takeaways. But for me, I heard passion. I heard persistence. I heard failure doesn't exist in my life. I'm hearing that I'm going to go as far as I can go, and I'm going to go one step farther. And for the work that you do, so many people need that. And along your journey, I think it's, as anyone that's a coach, a consultant, a doctor, working with other people, it's kind of cliche to say, but in our world, I think it's very true that we really are changing the world. And the lives that you impact, it's not just that person's life, it's all the people around them, it's their family, their friends. So Liz, thank you so much for the work that you do, because you are literally changing the world one person at a time. And
Thank you.
for anyone out there, I'm sure there's a bunch of people right now thinking to themselves, okay, how do I talk to this person? I'd love to chat. Where can they find you? How can they learn more about you and Evolve Counseling?
Sure. So our website is evolvecounselingaz.com. And then, as you know, I can be found on Instagram at Dr Elizabeth Federick. And so that is, I hang out on Instagram quite a bit. I'm happy to jump in the DMs and have conversations with people. And that's probably the easiest place to find me.
Amazing. Well, there you have it, folks. I will make sure that I get those links in the show notes, so you can learn more about Dr. Liz and Evolve Counseling. And I just want to once again thank you so much. I mean, you have so much going on. You took the time out of your day to chat with myself and all these amazing aspiring entrepreneurs out there. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we just heard from not just a phenomenal entrepreneur that pivoted in the middle of a pandemic, decided that she wasn't going to quit. She built her business times 15, is it now? And
Yep.
continues to grow and impact this world. Not only that, this person has the heart of a champion fighter, that she refuses to quit. She continues to move forward. The definition of success is one step further than I thought I could go. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it was such an honor. Dr. Elizabeth Federick, everyone. Thank you so much, Liz, for giving us the time. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.